Hit record. Hi, everyone. So now we're official now. I'm going to share my slides for a moment. Some of this may sound a little repetitive because we've already been going, but hi, everyone. It's time for our Teen Science Cafe. I'm Lauren Traster, the 4-H Teen and Leadership Program Coordinator here at UVM Extension. So to get started, we love to know where everyone is from. So open up your chat box, and if you haven't already done so, please introduce who you are and where you are from today. If you need our live captioning, I put into the chat the link that you need to click on in order to have those live captioning. And just want to go over and remind everyone of our protocols for when we're here in Zoom. All of you are muted today. You don't have the ability to unmute yourself, but that doesn't mean we don't want you to chat with us, share your ideas, thoughts, and questions. And there's two ways that we do this. You can use the chat box for answering questions that our presenter might ask you, or share a thought that's related to the topic, but isn't a question. The questions that you have for our presenter, you need to put those in the Q&A box. And what's cool about the Q&A box, if someone asks a question you like, you can actually click on the thumbs up and it upvotes the question. But don't worry, it doesn't matter where your question is in the queue. We do answer all questions before we leave. So we want to make sure everyone's questions get asked, and we also make sure that everyone's questions get answered. So as always, we ask that you be courteous and respectful to one another. So what that really means is, in the chat box, keep things on topic. When you start chatting and when it's off topic, it becomes really distracting for those that are trying to pay attention and listen, and that can be considered disrespectful. So just stay engaged, participate fully. I know we have a great presentation today. But before we get to that, I just want to mention a couple of new programs that are coming up through UVM Extension. We have a new series exploring different careers called How Did You Get There? And it's basically informational interviews with people to learn about the jobs that they have. I know there's two already listed in our website. There's one with a forensic investigator, I think a police officer who does forensic work. And there's another one scheduled with the archivist at Burton Snowboards. That one sounds really cool, to learn about the history and evolution of snowboards. But they're also going to be talking about manufacturing. So you can check that out. We have a cool program coming up the first weekend in March. We have invited staff from the extension in Kentucky to lead a program they do called Critical Conversations, where you learn about implicit bias and discrimination, race and justice, and learn how to facilitate really difficult conversations with your peers. So that one I'm going to encourage you all to think about coming to. I think it's a really important one. And then I have some colleagues who are running a program called Croak, Slither, and Slide. They are exploring herpetology. And so you can learn more about each of these programs at the website listed, and I'll pop that into the chat as soon as I can. But let's get to today's presentation. We're going to be looking inside a solar cell, a non-linear approach to impedance spectroscopy. I can't even say it. I'm going to have our presenter, Robin Rice, tell you all about it. But let me tell you a little bit about Robin. Robin is a graduate student at University of Vermont. He's currently completing his master's in materials science. And he entered the field of materials science after receiving his bachelor's, also from UVM, in environmental science back in 2018. Robin's research started in organic chemistry with a focus on developing novel syntheses for organic semiconductors, and has moved into design, fabrication, and electrical analysis of organic solar cells within Dr. Matthew White's device fabrication lab at UVM, in addition to continued organics synthesis and coordination with the UVM chemistry department. So let's all welcome Robin and let's learn about his work that I cannot even pronounce.
You're not alone. Many people cannot pronounce it. I changed my presentation a little bit, so we will not have to say that word.
But you know how to pronounce it, so it doesn't matter. I don't ever have to say it though.
Spectroscopy is, I think, how you say it. But here, I can share my screen. I think I figured out how to do this right. All right, is that working?
Yep, looks good.
Yeah, okay, sweet. So yeah, today we're gonna be talking about solar cells and also LEDs and how I study them and how it relates to music and how we can actually use sort of ideas of music and specifically harmonics, which you might have heard of before, to understand how they work. So a little bit, here we go. A little bit about me. I grew up in Maryland, right outside of DC, in a small little place called Tacoma Park. There was about 2 houses between me and like the northern tip of DC. DC is kind of like a square, and I lived like right on the tip of the square. And I came all the way up to Vermont to do my bachelor's, like Lauren said, to do my undergraduate. And I ended up getting a degree in environmental science. And I'm now doing my master's in material science. And you might say, first, what is material science? That's a great question. Don't feel bad. No one knows what material science is. I didn't know what material science was until my senior year of college. Maybe a semester before I decided to start doing this. So don't worry, most people don't know what it is. In short, it's the science of materials. Someone explained it to me once that engineers use materials to build things, and material scientists study how those materials work so that engineers can use them. It's a really, really big nebulous field, and it's easier to just think of it as physics for me, since that's most of what I do. And specifically, I do physics of solar cells, but we'll get into that in a second. So yeah, a little bit about my journey. I was always really interested in science, but I never really knew what I wanted to do for a long time. I did my undergraduate in environmental science, but I took a lot of chemistry and math classes. And at one point, I did some research over a summer in an organic chemistry lab. I realized I really liked lab work, and then I actually only took my first physics class in college in my senior year, and I just really liked it apparently, and I kept doing that and decided to get my master's in it. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about solar cells. This is a picture of the lab that I work in, and this is, as we'll see later on, this is a big, giant science machine that actually takes up an entire room that we use to make solar cells and LEDs. But what is a solar cell? You've probably heard or seen a solar panel or a solar module here. You might even have one on your house or your home. And you can see them maybe on bus stops or little traffic lights. And so basically, inside each one of these solar modules, there are what we call little solar cells. And each one of these are electrically connected together. Here we have a 4 by, or a 5 by what looks like 8 array of solar cells. And so they're all electrically connected together to make a solar module, which are connected together to make a solar panel, which make a solar array. So that's what a solar cell is. And so what I do is I basically design solar cells and LEDs. Mainly what I do is we have lots of different materials that we can use to make these. And we can change them out and test out what the difference is, if they're better at doing what they do or worse at doing what they do. And so we can design better ones. And if we go back to the previous slide, these solar cells are pretty big. And if we made all of our solar cells in our lab the same size, we would have a lot of waste, because as soon as we make one, we test it, and then we make another with another little change. And so in order to avoid that, we make really, really, really small devices, solar cells and LEDs. And here's a little diagram of just how small they are. These are on the order of nanometers. So we have maybe a 200 nanometer thick layer. So does anyone know, and you can put this in the chat, does anyone know what a nanometer is, what nano stands for? I can go back. Let me see if I can find the chat.
So I would say, think about breaking the word down, nano and meter. So what does a nanometer mean? So we have 1/1000th of a meter, 1/1000000000th of a meter. Anyone get it yet? Those are the two suggestions so far.
Those are pretty good. So a nano means 1/10000000th. Yeah, we've got 1/10000000th of a meter there, 1/1000000000th. So nano is 10 with 9 zeros on it. 1/10 to the 9th power. So what does that mean? So 1000 is a 1 with 3 zeros after it. And then 100,000 is a 1 with 6 zeros after it. And then 1,000,000 is a 1 with 9 zeros. So it's 1/1,000,000. So these are 1/1,000,000 meters. 1/1,000,000th of a meter. Very, very, very small. And here is actually a SEM picture of one. And you can see that they're really just like a very flat device. And I didn't have a picture here. But they're just very, very, very thin layers. You can see kind of differentiating. This is a different device, but you can still see the different layers here, and they're all very, very closely packed. Yeah. And so how do we make these? So we make these using this machine that basically you put whatever material you want. Say we wanted to make a layer of silver. You put a material, you put a little blob of silver, and we'll see a little video of this in here, into this, what we call a crucible. And this crucible gets heated up really to really, really high temperatures until it melts, and then it just evaporates off. And if we hold a small little piece of glass over all of that evaporating material, the silver will stick to the glass, and then we can make a really, really, really thin layer out of that. and it can be really even and really precise. And so what you see here, we have two, can you see my mouse?
No.
No? Let me see. Oh,
Oh yeah,
mouse.
no, yeah, now I
Here we
can. Yeah.
The fun of having two different screens. So what we have here are basically just really, really sciencey ovens. So we have one here and then one here, and we have little windows that we can look in and see what's going on. And so at the bottom of these ovens we have these crucibles where we heat up these materials, and then at the top we have basically a holder where we put our little pieces of glass, and then all of the material sticks onto there for however thick of a layer we want to make. And so here's a cool little video of how that actually works. So these are little silver pellets. And you can see as we heat it up, they start to melt and they form a bubble, and they get hot enough and they start to just evaporate off. And so I'll pause it here. You can see a little bit better. So we have this kind of cloud that comes off, and then we hold right above it a piece of glass, and we can get a really uniform, all of this little particles in this cloud stick to the glass up here, and we can get a really uniform thin layer. And Angstrom Engineering is just the company that makes all of this material, this giant device. Let me see if I can get that. There we go. It is cool. I really like it. I think it's awesome. Thanks, Eva. So what is an LED and what is a solar cell? I want to just go over that really quick. You might think it's kind of weird that our lab makes both LEDs and solar cells. They seem like really, really different things, but we're going to talk about, we'll see here, they're actually two sides of the same coin. So in an LED, basically what's going on, let me see if I can get back to, here we go. What's going on in LED, and I just made these little boxes, these represent an LED. We have current in, which is just, current is just the flow of electrons. So we have moving electrons. Electrons are moving through the LED here. And sorry, LED, yeah, so they're moving through the LED. And then the LED, with those moving electrons, produces light. So light comes out of the LED. So current in and light out. And so we get that with the name. LED stands for light emitting diode. And this particular kind of structure is just called a diode, but all that it means is just that it emits light. And so a solar cell is actually just the opposite of that. You have light comes in, it hits the solar cell, and it produces current. So you have light in and current out. So they're really, really similar things, and they're actually really similar materials and similar designs. And so that's why we make both different things, both solar cells and LEDs. And I actually have a picture, I have a little video of an LED that I made recently. On the next slide. Let me see if I can play this. And so you can see here I'm running current through. This is the, there's a little piece of glass. It's about 1 inch by 1 inch underneath here. And you can see there's little points where I can connect current to run through one of these pixels here. And so here's current in, here's current coming out. And they'll light up this one pixel here. And there it is. And so we get light coming out. And it's a nice green color. And that's just based on how we designed it, it emits that nice green color. So the question is, how do we test these devices? Because not all of them produce light, and say we make a really bad LED, it might not produce light, and so we can't always figure out what's going on inside of these just by looking at maybe the light that comes out, right? Because a solar cell doesn't produce light. So what we can do is run current through either device and see how the current looks when it comes out. And what I'm going to go through here, and so here you can see a little more clearly, it's kind of small. We have these little pins, and those are connected to this device, and so we can run current through it. And so what this presentation is going to be about is we can think about this as playing a piano, where what we input is we're selecting a note, and then the output is what we hear, the sound we hear that the instrument makes. So the input would be the note that we selected, and then the output, the thing that we analyze to test, to measure these devices, is whatever comes out. And it actually is really, really similar to how a piano works. And so we're going to go into a little bit of how a piano works. So the first question I have is, how does a piano play notes? And you can put this in the chat. Does anyone know how a piano plays notes? Oop, don't play. I've played piano for a long time, so I always love this. So you have like a violin as you draw a bow over it. The key causes the wire to hit a piece of metal. Hammers are connected to the keys. Hammers hit strings, I think. It's a really good guess. The little hammers in it, and when you press the key, the hammer falls and hit the strings. Yeah, you were on it. This is exactly right. So we can see this here is when I have a little video here. And you'll have to forgive me. I really like visualizations, so there's lots of little videos in this presentation, so I hope you don't mind. So when you play a key, and I don't know if the audio will work or not. When you play a key, you're actually playing these hammers, which hit these. You can see these black strings up here. Let me go back. So this is why a piano is actually a percussion instrument, because you're actually hitting something a lot like a drum. Excuse me. A lot like a drum or a xylophone is a really similar thing, only with a xylophone, you're holding the hammers. But yeah, this is why pianos are always in the percussion section. And here we go. And so what actually happens with the hidden percussion instruments? Exactly, it's all hidden inside. So what is actually happening when you're hitting that string? So what happens, and you might already know this, but the string bounces up and down. I don't know, Lauren, can you see, is my camera on at all?
Yeah, we can see you.
Okay, cool. So when you hit that string, the string bounces up and down. And so when we have something that goes up and down or goes between two states, we say that that oscillates. And we can describe that as a sine wave. And so here's a neat little video that shows kind of how that works, because I was always kind of confused, because it's not that the string itself makes the sine wave shape, it's that it's oscillating between two different points, and it's that oscillation that makes a sine wave. And so this might help explain that a little bit better. So here you can imagine this is our string here, it's bouncing up and down. And then as we look at that through time, that's where we see our sine wave. And you can see we have multiple cycles in here. A cycle is just as it goes up and down and returns to its original position. That would be one cycle. So as it goes down and up, that's one cycle. And so we can see that here it's going down and then back up, and then back to the original position. This right here is one cycle. And so here we're showing 1, 2, 3 cycles. And if this was all happening within 1 second, if it was going up, if it was going down and up and back, and then down and up and back, and down and up and back, all in 1 second, we would say that happens at 3 cycles per second, or 3 hertz. That's what a hertz is. That's what the units of frequency are. So we would say this has a frequency of 3 hertz. And we'll see more about that later. Oop. Go back and give the answers. So where else do we see sine waves? And you can put this in the chat. We just saw an example of a sine wave that happens in a piano. When you hit the string, then the string oscillates up and down, and we get a sine wave. So where else do we see sine waves? Guitars, violins, exactly, other musical instruments. Great answers. Any other places? Anything maybe like natural processes, something that isn't an instrument? Waves, water, yeah, you got it. So waves in water. Wind, yeah, we can also, and we'll see that later on. The difference between wind and sound waves. So here are some of the other ones that I thought of, that I'm sure you all thought of too. Radio waves. So the way a radio works is with waves. Sound waves are coming from vocal cords. That's a really good one, yeah. Singing, it's all just waves. Ocean waves, like you said. Light is a wave. Earthquakes, that might be one that you're more familiar with. It's just waves through the ground. And here's a really cool example. Echolocation, that's a cool one, yeah. That is also waves, and it's sound, yeah. Echolocation is, echo is, well, it means an echo. And then locating through sound, yeah, exactly. Here is a really wild example of a wave, and this is a video of a bridge back in, I think, 1940 that got caught in a really, really gusty day to the point where it started to wave around, and we'll see just how how intense that waving got. And eventually we'll see what happens with that.
As you can see, this bridge was
Skip ahead just a little bit here.
during against bending. However, some
So
up and down from the bridge against bending.
This is the side of the bridge, and these, what are called gators, are 8 feet tall. So you'll see that later, just kind of flapping around. This is just how big this is.
See the steel girders, 8 feet tall, bridge.
So this is opening day. And this bridge only lasted for, I think, 40 days.
On November 7th, the bridge suddenly went into a twist.
Also, can you hear any of the audio from these videos?
Yeah, we can hear it.
You can hear it? Okay. I cannot hear it. So this will be interesting. I'll turn it down a little bit. So
motion.
It's on a
The
really
wind speed
windy
was
day.
a steady 42 miles per hour. This was enough to keep the bridge oscillating in one of its natural
And
modes of
here's the
vibration
bridge. It's
with a period
oscillating.
of 5 seconds.
It goes, you can see it goes up and down, up and down, up.
A professor of engineering went out to see what had happened. He's coming back, walking with some difficulty along the nodal line, which is the center stripe of the roadway.
And it's a little blurry, but you can even see a car is stuck on the bridge too. And so there you go. Remember that these are like 8 feet tall, and it's just flapping around like nothing. So this is
It's remarkable that the girders were this flexible.
Oh, okay. You can't hear me.
This is
talking in the
photographed
video.
at normal speed. However, a collapse was inevitable after a little more than an hour of this.
Thanks, Lauren. Sine waves are everywhere. They're everywhere. But here we'll play, and thanks, Lauren, for pointing out that that you can't hear me when the video is playing audio. But we'll kind of go towards the end, and you'll see kind of a result of all of this stress that is being built up in this bridge.
He perished along with the bridge.
So the raw power of sine waves by bridge. And Vivian, you also said your audio is cutting out. Let me know in the chat, is anyone else having issues with the audio? Just so we know moving forward.
I think it may just be her internet connection.
Okay. It is terrible resolution. I think that might just be this video. Again, this is a bridge from 1940. So the video quality is about at the same level.
I think he actually means your slides. Your slides, the actual words are all, you can't really read them.
Oh, they are? Uh-oh.
Yeah, so I've never experienced this before. So I think it's somehow the way you created your slides, because they're just not coming through clear. I don't think there's anything you can do right now about it. So I would just say, read what's on your slides because we can't make everything out.
Okay, yeah. There's not a lot of text on the slides, luckily. But okay, can't read the words too well. I will make sure I read everything that's on here. This is the what it says here is this is the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. And here is a little video on how sound works. And sound is actually just the movement. It's just waves through through air. And we have to be careful about this because what a wave does is it transports energy through a medium without moving the medium itself. So we're not moving the air, we're just moving it back and forth a little bit, and then it's bumping in with its neighbor. And then so it's kind of like billiards or like pool where you're just knocking from one to the other. But you're not moving one little piece of air all the way from, say, a speaker all the way to your ear. Because if we were moving just a piece of air all the way to your ear, that would just be wind. And you can hear things without it being windy. And here's a little video. I'm going to skip ahead here.
Check out this speaker. If we plug it in.
So the particles are not just moving around, they're just oscillating back and forth. And so how do they get to your ear? Oh, I'm sorry, Vivian. So like I said, they just oscillate back and forth, and then kind of like in pool, they just bounce into their nearest neighbors and bounce and bounce and bounce until it gets to your ear, and the last ones just bounce into your ear. And they oscillate back and forth. They're going from one position to the other. And we hear that as a sine wave and as music. And so we'll see that more later on. And so how do we describe a sine wave? Does anyone know like the defining features of a sine wave? And you can just put this in the chat. So we have peaks and troughs here. And we have a distance between them. I'm getting a no. So let's go through what we have here. And I'm sorry again, this is also a very blurry wave. Sorry, a very blurry picture. But you can see that this wave has a height to it. And so we say that that height is the amplitude, how high it goes up from the center point. So if you have a spring in a ball, it starts somewhere, you pull it away, and then it bounces back and forth. And it does so with a certain height. And it makes sine waves to have a certain height. And then, so we said before that our sine wave, it'll be going up and down and up and down. And so the distance between these two peaks, when we look at it in time in this lower graph, so that's the period. And then in distance, it's the wavelength, but we're not going to worry about that as much. Sorry. So amplitude is how tall the sine wave is. And remember, if we go back to thinking about the wave on the piano string, right? When we hit a piano string with a hammer, then it oscillates, it goes up and down and up and down. And so it goes up a certain amount. And however tall the wave goes up, we would say that's how loud the sound is. So you hit it a string harder, then it'll go up and down higher. And so it'll be a louder sound. And then if we hit it softer, then it'll only go up and down just a little bit. And we say that that's a quieter sound. So how tall the wave is how loud the sound is. And then we also have frequency. And frequency is how quickly we go up and down. And so you might know this. So on a piano, when you play a really low note, it sounds like a do. What you're actually hearing is that string going up and down at a relatively low, it's going up and down slowly, like do. But when you play a note higher up on the piano, it sounds a little bit higher, and it sounds like ding. And it's actually the wave going up and down more quickly. So on a piano, we have low notes, and those are actually low frequencies. And the high notes are playing high frequencies. So say a low note might be going up and down 10 times, maybe 1 time per second, going 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. That would be a low frequency. And if it was going up and down really quickly, that would be a high frequency. And so each key on a piano has a different frequency. And so here you can see that the frequency increases as we go from the low notes to the high notes, all the way up here. And then again, amplitude is just how hard the hammer hits the wire. And then frequency is how fast the wire goes up and down. And we measure that in hertz, which is how many times per second. And so here you can see why that is. On a piano, we have really long strings for the low notes. We have really short strings for the high notes. And so if you hit a string that's a lot longer, you can think of it as it can stretch out a lot more. And so it can oscillate up and down more slowly. And then for a really short string, like the ones we have up here for the high notes, then it goes up and down really, really, really quickly. And we hear that as a high pitch. And so here's a little exercise. Which of these will have a higher frequency? So we have the sound of a bass, a stand-up bass. And we also have, I see one of you already put an answer in. We also have a mosquito. And so go ahead and put your guesses in. Which one of these will have a higher frequency? I'm getting lots of mosquitoes. So we have a mosquito here, and we have a stand-up bass here, and then a mosquito. So let's go ahead and we can listen. First, we'll listen to the stand-up bass. All right, can everyone hear that?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, cool. And I will only play, I won't torture you with lots of mosquito sounds. We'll play this very quickly. All right, and can you hear that one? Okay. So what are the actual frequencies here? So the frequency, who can tell me what the frequency would come? It is so annoying. It's a primal instinct that it releases in me. What would be the frequency of a mosquito? What would that come from? What is that sound coming from? I have the wings. Yeah, exactly. It's the wings. It's flapping up and down. And so let's look at what the actual frequency is. The wings going up and down, making the sine wave. Oh, exactly. You got it. Y'all are so smart. So let's see. Here we go. So we had the stand-up bass. It had a really low sounding noise. And so it turns out it has just a really low frequency. That string vibrates a lot more slowly than a mosquito flaps its wings. And so you can, for me, it's pretty easy to imagine going up and down in 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds. So I'm going just 1 cycle per second there. Imagine what 300 to 400 flaps per second. That's really, really fast. I can't even, I think it's probably on the high end of what we can physically see with our eyes. So now we have the question. We know that pianos make sine waves. And I'm going to play you what an A4 note is here. An A4 just means an A on the 4th octave of a piano. So an octave is just a group of 8 notes. So you start really low, you have 1 octave, 2 octave, 3 octave, 4 octave. And on a grand piano, that's just in the center of the keyboard. And so I'll play you these two. And I want you to tell me in the chat which one is a sine wave and which one is a piano. So the sine wave I just generated with a computer. And which one is a piano, which one is one that's been recorded. So here's number 1. So tell me which one is the piano note. All right, so that's number 1. I'll play it one more time. There we go. And here's number 2. I'll play that one more time. So tell me which one in the chat is the piano note. So I'm getting lots of number 1s, lots of number 1s. 1 is the sine wave, the second is the piano. I'm regretting here. I can't actually hear which one is which. But number 2 sounds like a phone beep. Okay. Do we have any other guesses for which one is the sine wave and which one is the piano? So I've got the first is the sine wave, the second is the piano, and I've got the second is the one that sounds like a phone beep. I'll play them one more time. So here's number 1. Here's number 2. Number 1 is piano. All right, and if I remember right, this one is the piano, and the one that sounds like a phone beep, the beep, that's really constant, that one is the sine wave. So that's what a sine wave sounds like. And so what's wild is that both of these have the same frequency. They're both an up and down of 440 times per second. Yeah, isn't that crazy? They're both 440 hertz. So for a piano, this is the A4 note, so the 4th octave A. And so you play that. And so that key is the key that corresponds to 440 hertz. But we hear something that is very different from something that is just a pure sine wave. So why do they sound so different? Yeah, and Eva, you got it. They sound so different. One is, in my mind, much more unpleasant than the other. So let's figure that out. So you might have made sine waves before, and this is just one way that you can do it, just with a rope. And if you have it fixed at one end and you shake it, you might have gotten something that looks kind of like this. And you see we have an up and a down and an up and a down, an up and a down. Has anyone done something like this, either with maybe a jump rope or a slinky, or a piece of string? I'm getting one yes, a yes. Another yes. You have all, congratulations, you have all made sine waves. And this is actually what you're seeing here is a special type of wave that we'll get to. So one thing that you might have done, and slinkies are really fun to do this with, but you can use anything. You can use a rope, you can use a piece of string, and if you have any little pieces of string or a slinky, I encourage you to like play around with them as you watch. So if you shake a slinky, and so this is 15 minutes remain. All right, we might not get to all of it, but we get to what a harmonic is, I think. If you shake a slinky, then you're sending a pulse down the line here. And then so if it's fixed at one end, then that will go all the way down, and then it'll flip back and it'll go back towards you. So if you flip a string and it's fixed at one end, your pulse will travel down, and then it'll flip and it'll come back towards you. And so what happens if you do two pulses? So you have one going down and it flips and it comes back towards you, but then you have another one that's up here. What happens when they meet? And you can see that right here, we have one going up and going this way, and another down below and it goes this way. When they meet up, they make it look like there's nothing going on. They cancel each other out. Exactly. Yeah, you got it. And then they pop back up. And then if we have two going in the same direction, and we can do that if we have kind of two shakes going in the same direction, so they're both going towards each other, then what happens when they meet each other? What happens when those two waves get to each other? Is they add up and they make one bigger wave, and then they separate apart. And so waves can interfere. And you can think of this makes sense, because if there are waves in sound, you can talk in a room where there are other people talking. If other people are making waves in the air with their mouth, with their vocal cords, then they can kind of pass through each other, and you can still hear each other through all of it. And so here's a cool example with a slinky.
So it feels funny in between because you feel that destructive interference.
Faster and faster.
So you have to jump to the twice as fast and
At a certain frequency, you can shake.
Oh yeah, there you go.
And go back to that. You can shake the entire length of the slinky or the string, and then as you can watch their arm, they're shaking it faster and faster.
so it feels funny in between because you feel that destructive interference.
Right, they're going up and down.
So you have to jump to the twice as fast and
There you go.
Thanks, Lauren. So as they shake it, they get more. Here, I'll start from the beginning because I didn't. So if you shake at a certain frequency, if you shake it fast enough, you can vibrate, you can shake the entire length of the slinky. And then you'll see as they shake it faster, some other cool things can happen. And so just watch their arm as they shake it. So watch their arm and then see what kind of wave is made. So they're shaking it faster here. Whoop, oh no. So they're shaking it faster. And then we get what looks like just a sine wave. And what this actually is lots of little pulses adding up to each other. And you can see at the maximum point here, at the highest point, there's lots of little pulses adding up to each other to make one big pulse. And then at this point, they're adding up to zero. They're canceling each other out. Oh, the audio cut out. Uh-oh. Here, well, I might go to a next slide. So this shows the same thing. As we shake it faster and faster, right? We have a certain frequency that we shake to get this what we call the fundamental, where we shake the entire length of the screen, the entire length of the string. And then we shake it faster, and we get what looks like a standing wave. This wave just kind of sits here. And then when we shake it faster, and so right here we have this point where all the waves cancel out, and we get looks like there's nothing. There's no wave. And so we call that a node. And so as we increase the frequency, as we go down here, there seems to be more and more parts of this standing wave. And so this is what's called a harmonic series. And we're going to talk about this a little more, and we might not get to all of it, but this is just an introduction. And so what's crazy here is that there's specific frequencies for each one of these standing waves. So say you have to shake 10 times back and forth per second to get the fundamental. To get this shape here, you would have to shake twice as fast. So go twice as fast, And then you would get this next, what we call the second harmonic shape here. And then to get the third harmonic, you do 3 times as fast as the first harmonic. So you go really, 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 really fast. And you get this shape. And so you could see the person in the video was trying to shake really, 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 really fast. And it gets really hard to get up to here because you have to go to even higher frequencies. So you can put in the chat, what do you think the frequency would, what frequency would you have to shake back and forth to get to the 4th harmonic? I have one answer. I have a 40. I have a 40. 40 hertz. Nice. Using units. I like it. Any other guesses? So we have 40 hertz. We have a few different 40s. Yeah, so 40, it's exactly 40 hertz. And, oh, I didn't put it there, but we're actually, you can see again, as they shake it, it gets really, really hard because you're going, layering it over each other. It makes this shape, yeah. These are interfering sine waves. Exactly, Ava. Yeah. They're sine waves bouncing back from the fixed point of your hand and the fixed point of the other end of the slinky. Yeah, and so at the peaks, here, it's all constructive interference. And then at the nodes, it's all destructive interference. Yeah, so it's lots of waves adding together, and then they add up to 0 here. They cancel each other out. And then it switches. So here they're all adding up to each other. Yeah. And you can see, it is really cool. I think it's really awesome. And so we can watch the video again and you can see that happen.
So it feels funny in between because you feel that destructive interference. So you have to jump to the twice as fast and
There you go. Oh, you had it. There you go.
she's going for both. She's going for 4.
There.
Over 5.
5.
I understand. You got to experience this. You feel like so awkward in between.
Yeah.
So she was really struggling at the end to get it all the way up. So that's what harmonics are, and we can kind of just leave it there, and go to questions. I'm sorry this took longer than I thought it would. But yeah, do you have any questions?
So I'm gonna say, if you have questions, you can write them in the chat. I'm also just gonna pop up our poll right now, just rating of what you learned today, 1 to 5. So either put your questions in the Q&A or actually put them in the Q&A. They'll be easier to organize. We'll just do our feedback poll first, and then we'll get to your questions.
What's the highest number you can get the waves? So what's the highest, I think what they're asking is what's the highest harmonic?
So if for some reason you can't see the poll, just put it in the chat. But it looks like most of you have gone ahead and done the poll, so that's great.
So you can actually have, oh, sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, you're good. Let me just end that and say what you're gonna say. And I see we do have one question. Oh, did you see the question that was in the Q&A?
Yeah, I was just gonna answer that.
Okay, I'm gonna just read it out loud just for the recording. What's the highest number you can get the waves?
What's the highest number you can get the waves? You can go infinitely high. There is not a limit. Well, I guess there's a limit to the point where the string would break. That's what the limit is. But you can have, think about this. This is with a slinky. So that you could go as fast as the slinky would break, but we can also have waves in sound. And so you can just have waves that go really, 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 really high. And so you can think about this as we can't actually hear beyond a certain point. And so they would go up beyond where we can hear. And so you might know that younger people can hear higher frequencies than older people in general. But yeah, it's super cool. Will you continue this Zoom in another? I would actually love to. I've had a lot of fun, and I'm sorry that we didn't get all the way to solar panels.
So I'm wondering, is there a way within like just a few minutes to make that connection to how everything
yeah.
talked about?
We're actually there.
That'd be great if you can just make that connection.
Yeah, so what's actually going on, the reason that the sine wave, just that pure sine wave, sounds different from what a piano sounds like, is that a piano is actually playing, when we hit the note, we're actually playing all of these higher harmonics, and they're all interfering with each other. And so all of these harmonics, they're a lot quieter, but they do, so we still hear that main, what we call the fundamental frequency. So we played a note that was 440 hertz. So we played 440 hertz, and so it's also playing all of these higher frequencies, and so that's why it sounds different. And so that's for a piano. So we have our input is we're selecting our note, which is what our fundamental is. So our 10 hertz here. And then we're listening to the output, what's created, which is all of these higher harmonics. And we can actually, through math, figure out what all of those higher harmonics are. And I can skip ahead a bit here. And so we say we have these 3 waves, we can add them together to get what like a piano sound would look like. And these are just sine waves. And 100 hertz, 200 hertz, 300 hertz. So these are all harmonics. So then we can add them up, and then we can, through math, figure out what's inside of them. And we get a plot like this. So we see 100 hertz, 200 hertz, 300 hertz, and they're getting quieter. And there they are. And so we can do the same thing. Oop, let me see how far we can go. Oh no, I think it crashed. But essentially, oh, that's what happened. What happens is current is also alternating. So you have alternating current. So electricity also acts as a wave. And so we can do the same thing with an electric device. We listen to, we have one wave going in, and we see all the different harmonics that come out as current. And the same, so it's the same thing as with a piano. We choose a note, some frequency, and then we see all of the different harmonics that come out. And so each different device has a different set of harmonics because it has different notes. And so we can use that to test solar cells and LEDs just by looking at the current and the harmonics in the current. Hopefully that is a little bit answers the question. I know it's kind of rushed, and I'm sorry that I didn't better prepare my time.
That's great. If anyone wants to like ask questions, is there a way for them to like reach out to you and ask questions? If anything comes up after this, or does your lab have a website?
We do have a website. It's not this informative.
Oh, okay.
It's not really meant for this kind of education.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I don't know if it's possible to like do another, like if I just record something on my own, or there's something else, but
yeah, we can definitely talk about that. I know our schedule is full for the up until June, unless someone backs out, but I'm always looking, you know, forward on. So, but I know, sounds like these guys learned a lot about sine waves and got them thinking. So let's all thank Robin for, you know, his time today and educating you on the beginning connections here with what do you call it? The music of solar cells.
The music of solar cells.
Yeah, nice.
Waves are everywhere.
Waves are everywhere. Nice. You won't look at things the same again. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop our recording right now.
Thank you all for coming.